That night, under the cold chandelier light, my mother placed the mansion keys on the linen napkin and smiled, calling it the deserved reward for a son who knows how to bring honor to the family. They didn't look my way until I opened the black folder and slid out a document proving that mansion had belonged to me for exactly 5 minutes. If you've ever been cropped out of the family portrait at the most crucial moment, sit down. The moment they realized who really held the cards will leave you breathless. My name is Ava Hartley, and I've spent 32 years learning that some families don't need enemies when they have each other. The wine glass felt heavy in my hand that Sunday evening, its crystal edge catching the amber light from my parents' chandelier. The same chandelier that had presided over every family gathering where I'd been assigned the role of photographer, server, or silent audience member. Tonight was no different. Brandon sat at the head of the table, my father's usual spot, graciously surrendered to the golden child while I stood near the sideboard, ready to refill glasses and capture moments I'd never be part of. Get one with just the 3 of us. My mother, Diane, instructed, adjusting her pearl necklace as she leaned closer to Brandon. My father, Martin, placed his hand on Brandon's shoulder with the kind of pride that made headlines in alumni magazines. The surgeon's son. The continuation of excellence. The one who mattered. Click. Another family portrait without me. I set down the camera and walked to the mantel where a dozen framed photos told the Caldwell family story. Brandon's medical school graduation. Brandon's first surgery. Brandon with the mayor at some charity gala. In the corner, barely visible, sat a small frame with my college graduation photo turned slightly away, as if it had accidentally wandered into the wrong collection. Ava, the Pinot needs refilling, my mother called without looking at me. The bottle felt lighter than my resentment. As I moved around the table, pouring precisely 2 fingers into each glass, I caught fragments of their conversation. Brandon's new surgical technique, the conference in Switzerland, the 7-figure practice he'd been invited to join, each achievement stacked like poker chips, while my work at Frontier Meridian Capital evaluating millions in real estate risks, saving clients from catastrophic investments remained as invisible as I was in those photos. "How's your little job going?" Diane asked during a rare pause, the way someone might inquire about a hobby. "I just prevented a $20 million acquisition failure last month. The property had 3 unrecorded liens and a boundary dispute That's nice, dear, Brandon. Tell them about the pediatric separation surgery." That's nice, dear. The 3 words that had soundtracked my entire life. When I'd won the undergraduate research award for my thesis on predictive risk modeling in real estate markets, that's nice, dear. When I'd been promoted to senior analyst at 28, youngest in the firm's history, that's nice, dear. When I'd started dating Eli, who taught music to underprivileged kids and made me laugh until my ribs ached, that's nice, dear. But is he really ambitious enough for you? Martin raised his glass. To Brandon, to legacy, to keeping the Caldwell name where it belongs at the top. They clinked glasses. I stood holding the empty bottle, watching the bubbles rise in their champagne, each one carrying up another tiny piece of my patience. The chandelier light fractured through the crystal, throwing rainbow patterns on the wall, beautiful, broken things that only existed when nobody was really looking. I walked back to the sideboard, set down the bottle, and made myself a promise. It tasted sharper than the wine, more permanent than those photos on the mantel. One more time. If they pushed me to the margins one more time, treated me like the supporting cast in the Caldwell family production, I wouldn't just rewrite my role. I'd rewrite the entire script. The mahogany frame caught my eye again, that graduation photo. My face turned 3/4 away from the camera because Brandon had called for me to look at something just as the shutter clicked. Even in my own moment, I'd been directed elsewhere. "Ava, could you grab the dessert wine?" Martin's voice carried the casual authority of someone who'd never been told no. "Of course," I replied, my voice steady as a level, measuring something none of them could see yet. As I descended into the wine cellar, the temperature dropped 10 degrees, and I could hear their laughter echoing through the floorboards above. The dusty bottles lined the walls like soldiers, each vintage waiting for its moment. I selected the sauternes they preferred, running my finger along its label. They had no idea what I really did at Frontier Meridian, how I could read a property's history in its deed transfers, uncover its secrets in courthouse records, find the fractures in ownership that could bring everything crumbling down. They thought I pushed papers. They were about to learn I could pull them too. Upstairs, the laughter continued. Brandon's voice dominated, punctuated by my parents' approving murmurs. The empty spot at the table where my place setting should have been had already been filled with Diane's purse. I poured the dessert wine with the same precision I used to calculate risk assessments. Each glass exactly 3 ounces. Each smile exactly as wide as required. "Such a help," Diane murmured absently, already turning back to Brandon. I stood in the shadows cast by that cold chandelier and made my second promise of the evening the next family portrait would look very different. They just didn't know it yet. The hierarchy in the Caldwell household had been established long before I understood what the word meant. It started with small things whose drawings went on the refrigerator, whose trophies got the prominent shelf, whose stories dominated dinner conversation. By the time I was 12, I'd learned my place in the family ecosystem necessary but not celebrated, present but not prioritized. Greenwood Village in the 90s was all manicured lawns and invisible competitions. Every family had their golden child, and Brandon wore that crown like he'd been born with it fused to his skull. The day he got accepted to medical school, my parents threw a party that spilled across 3 neighbors' yards, white tents, catered food, a jazz quartet. Martin gave a speech about legacy and achievement that made grown men cry. 2 weeks later, I won a full academic scholarship to study finance and real estate at CU Boulder. Diane bought a cake from the grocery store. "Oh, we would have done more," she said, but Brandon's party was so expensive, and really, undergraduate scholarships are quite common these days. That's when I started keeping score in my own way. At Frontier Meridian Capital, I found my calling in the details others overlooked. While my colleagues focused on square footage and cap rates, I dove into the archaeology of ownership. Every property told a story if you knew where to dig. Divorce decrees hiding in family court records. Tax liens filed in different counties. Mechanics liens from contractors who'd learned expensive lessons about handshake deals. "You're like a bloodhound," my boss, Richard, once said, watching me uncover a decade-old easement dispute that would have killed a $40 million development. "You find the rot before anyone else smells it." I loved the hunt, the measuring, the way a laser distance meter never lied about boundaries, unlike people. The way a title search revealed truth in black and white, no interpretation needed. Numbers didn't play favorites. Meanwhile, my family continued their performance of selective attention. When Brandon bought his first house, a suburban McMansion with more bathrooms than sense it warranted a featured article in the family Christmas letter. When I closed my first $1 million risk assessment that saved a client from bankruptcy, it didn't even make the postscript. "You should be more like your brother," Diane would say, usually after 3 glasses of Chablis. "He understands presentation. Success isn't just about doing the work, darling. It's about being seen doing it." But I was seen, just not by them. Like the time Mrs. Patterson's roof started leaking during a thunderstorm. She was 83, widow, living on Social Security. Brandon was in town for the weekend, sitting in our parents' living room discussing his latest publication in some medical journal. I grabbed Martin's ladder and a tarp and spent 4 hours in the rain patching her roof. "You're an angel," Mrs. Patterson said, pressing a thermos of hot coffee into my hands. When I got back, soaked and exhausted, Diane looked at me like I'd tracked mud on her Persian rug. "Really, Ava, we have people for that sort of thing. What will the neighbors think?" "They'll think we're helpful," I said. "They'll think we're the help," she corrected. "Brandon, tell her about the medical conference in Boston." The pattern never changed. Brandon performed success, I performed service. He collected accolades. I collected skills. He built a resume. I built expertise in the shadows. I learned to read loan documents like sheet music, each clause a note that could harmony or discord. I memorized Colorado's foreclosure statutes, understood the difference between judicial and non-judicial proceedings, knew exactly how many days each notice required and what happened when those deadlines passed. My colleagues joked I could spot a defective deed in my sleep. "Why do you work so hard on this stuff?" Eli asked one evening, watching me review a stack of title reports at dinner. "Your family doesn't even know what you do." "That's exactly why," I said, highlighting another discrepancy. "Because when the time comes, I want them to understand exactly what they missed." He kissed my forehead, the kind of gentle acknowledgement my family never offered. "You know you don't have to prove anything to them, right?" But he was wrong. I didn't want to prove anything to them. I wanted to prove something about them, that their hierarchy was built on performance, not substance, that their golden child glowed only because they kept the spotlight fixed on him, that the one they overlooked, the one they assigned to pour wine and take pictures, had been documenting more than family moments. I'd been documenting every crack in their foundation. The Caldwell Family Trust, I'd read it during one of my helpful organizing sessions in Martin's home office. The estate planning documents that prioritized Brandon's inheritance for the continuation of the family reputation. The investment accounts with Brandon as primary beneficiary. Even the family vacation home in Aspen already verbally promised to the son who would carry on the tradition. They'd built their house of cards on the assumption that I'd always stand in the shadows, holding the spotlight steady for Brandon's endless show. They never considered what would happen when I decided to flip the switch. More wine, I'd asked that night. Years of similar nights blending together. "Always so helpful," Martin had said without looking up. I smiled, the kind they never really saw, and made a mental note. Another entry in my ledger. Another debt to collect when the time was right. And as Brandon launched into another story about another surgery, another save, another triumph, I calculated compound interest on every slight, every oversight, every moment they'd erased me from the frame. The bill was coming due. They just hadn't received the notice yet. The Copperfinch restaurant gleamed with the kind of understated elegance my mother worshipped. Soft jazz, candlelight that forgave everything, and prices that ensured the wrong sort of people ate elsewhere. I arrived 5 minutes late deliberately and found them already deep into their appetizers and Brandon's latest triumph. "There she is," Martin said, barely glancing up from his scotch. "We ordered for you. The salmon." I hated salmon, had been allergic to it since childhood, but pointing that out would have disrupted the narrative where Brandon's preferences, and by extension, everyone's, were the only ones that mattered. "Perfect," I said, sliding into my designated seat at the far end of the table. The conversation flowed around me like water around a rock. Brandon's new surgical fellowship, the research grant he'd secured, the apartment in Cherry Creek he was eyeing. I sipped my water and waited, knowing my mother well enough to recognize the theatrical buildup in her gestures. At 8:45 p.m., she reached into her purse with the reverence usually reserved for religious artifacts. "We have something special tonight," Diane announced, producing a midnight blue velvet box. "Your father and I have been discussing the family's future." The box opened with a soft click. Inside, on cream silk, lay a set of keys, not just any keys, but the distinctive brass ones I recognized from property listings. High-end, custom-cut, the kind that opened doors to seven-figure homes. "The Seven Pines Estate," Martin said, his voice thick with pride. 4 bedrooms, lake access, the prestigious zip code. We're gifting it to Brandon. My water glass paused halfway to my lips. "For the next generation of Caldwells," Diane added, beaming at Brandon. "A proper home for a proper legacy. Close enough to visit, perfect for raising the family that will carry our name forward." The math ran through my head automatically. 7 Pines. Exclusive gated community. Properties starting at $2.5 million. the same development I'd flagged 3 months ago in a risk assessment for a client considering bulk purchases. That's generous, I managed. Well, success rewards success, Martin said, raising his glass. To Brandon, to the future, to keeping the Caldwell standard alive. Everyone raised their glasses, everyone except me. Ava, toast your brother, Diane commanded, her smile sharp as the crystal. I lifted my glass slowly. To getting exactly what we deserve. They clinked glasses, missing the edge in my voice entirely. Brandon launched into plans for renovation, a home office for his practice, the dinner parties he'd host. My parents glowed like proud suns orbiting their chosen planet. What about Ava? Eli's question cut through the celebration. I'd almost forgotten he was there, seated beside me in solidarity. Doesn't she get any consideration in the family's future planning? The table went quiet. Not contemplative quiet, dismissive quiet. The kind that preceded a gentle pat on the head. Oh, Ava's time will come, Diane said with a laugh that tinkled like breaking glass. Maybe a nice condo downtown, something appropriate for a single girl with a, what do you call it? Dear A job and paperwork. Risk assessment, I corrected quietly. Yes, that. Though, honestly, by the time we get around to Ava, it might be a studio. Estate planning is expensive these days. Martin chuckled at his own joke. Besides, Brandon needs the space. Ava's used to making do with less. Aren't you, sweetheart, making do with less? The family motto when it came to me. I excused myself to the restroom, but stopped at the bar instead. My hands were steady as I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my files. There it was. 7 Pines Development Risk Analysis. I'd flagged multiple properties for title issues, including one particular estate with a complicated lien history. The address matched. Of course it did. The universe, it seemed, had finally decided to deal me a winning hand. I returned to the table as dessert arrived. Creme brulee for Brandon, prepared tableside with extra fanfare, store-bought cheesecake for the rest of us. You know, I said conversationally. 7 Pines is interesting. I did an assessment on that development a few months ago. Really? Brandon asked, not really interested. Beautiful properties, though some had complications. What kind of complications? Eli asked, playing his part perfectly. Oh, the usual. Title clouds, unresolved liens, tax issues the sellers hoped buyers wouldn't notice. Property disclosure is so rarely complete these days. Martin waved dismissively. That's why we have lawyers, dear, to handle the trivial details. Trivial details. I smiled, tasting copper and possibility. When do you close? I asked. Already done, Diane said proudly. We paid cash. Wanted to surprise Brandon properly. The deed transfers Monday. Cash. No mortgage underwriting, no required title insurance, no professional inspection of the paperwork. Just trust in the seller and their own arrogance that money solved everything. How wonderful, I said, meaning it for entirely different reasons. They spent the rest of dinner planning Brandon's housewarming party. The guests' list read like a who's who of Denver's medical elite. I took mental notes, not of names but of the date 2 weeks out. Enough time for what I needed to do. You'll handle the catering coordination, won't you? Ava, Diane said, not asked. Said, I'll handle everything, I promised. As we left, Brandon jangled the keys like a trophy. Maybe you can visit sometime, he said magnanimously. The guest room is above the garage. You'd like that nice and quiet for your spreadsheets or whatever. Above the garage, even in his gift house, I was allocated the margins. That's very kind, I said. In the parking lot. Eli squeezed my hand. You okay? I'm perfect, I said. And for the first time in 32 years, meant it. I had 2 weeks to rewrite this story. 2 weeks to transform those keys from a symbol of their favoritism into evidence of their blindness. They thought they'd given Brandon a mansion. They'd actually given me the opportunity I'd been waiting for my entire life. Monday morning, 6:15 and wham! The courthouse records room smelled like old paper and ambition. I'd been there since they opened, working through property records with the focus of a surgeon. Ironic, considering what I was dissecting. The Seven Pines estate, 2847 Lakeshore Drive, had a dirtier history than a tabloid celebrity. The paper trail was all there, scattered across different departments like breadcrumbs meant to get lost. But I knew these woods. First discovery, the property tax. 3 years of partial payments. Penalties accruing like cancer cells. The previous owner had been making just enough payment to avoid immediate foreclosure, but not enough to clear the debt. Current amount due $47,832.16. Second discovery, the boundary dispute. The northern edge of the property overlapped with the neighboring lot by 12 feet. A surveying error from 1987 never corrected. The neighbor had filed a complaint 2 years ago. Case pending. Third discovery. The beautiful one, a mechanic's lien from Castellano Construction. $183,000 for unpaid renovation work. Still active. Still collecting interest. Still attached to the property like a parasite waiting for its moment. I photographed everything, my phone camera clicking like applause. "Finding what you need?" asked Janet, the records clerk who'd watched me work here for years. "Finding more than I expected," I said. "Family matter." I looked up from the deed history. "You could say that." By noon, I'd assembled the complete diagnostic. The title company my parents hadn't bothered to use would have caught all of this. The lawyer they'd trusted to handle their trivial details had clearly done the bare minimum. Or maybe he'd been golf buddies with the seller. In Denver's upper circles, handshakes still counted more than homework. I met with Tom Brennan that afternoon. Tom specialized in distressed debt acquisition. We'd worked together on several deals where my risk assessments had identified opportunity in others' oversights. "I need to purchase a non-performing note," I said, sliding the documentation across his desk. He whistled low. "This is a mess. Active liens, tax debt, boundary issues. Who's the current owner?" "As of this morning, my brother." Tom's eyebrows rose. "Family business. Family restructuring." He studied the papers, calculating. "The mechanic's lien is your cleanest entry point. Castellano Construction is bleeding money they'd probably take 40 cents on the dollar just to clear their books. I'll offer 50, through Hartley Ridge LLC, your shell company. My safety net." Tom leaned back. "You know if you execute on this lien, you could force a foreclosure. Colorado law is clear mechanics liens take priority over a lot of other claims. I know exactly what I can do." That afternoon, I sat in Castellano's dusty office in Commerce City. Mike Castellano looked like a man who'd been punched by the economy one too many times. $183,000, he said, staring at my offer. "You're offering $91,500. Cash. Today. Wire transfer within the hour." "Why?" "Because you've been chasing this money for 18 months. Because your lawyer is expensive. Because 50 cents on the dollar today is better than maybe 70 cents in 2 years. He rubbed his face. "The owner's been ducking me. Rich prick bought the place and stiffed me on the renovation. New owner now. My brother, actually." Mike laughed, bitter as black coffee. "Family, huh, must be nice." "Must be something," I agreed. We signed the assignment documents at 3:20 p.m. By 4, I owned Brandon's debt. By 5, I'd filed the notice of intent to execute on lien with the county clerk. The next morning, I pulled the tax records online. The system showed the estate's full history, every late payment, every penalty, every red flag that should have warned a careful buyer. My parents had paid $2.3 million cash for a property worth maybe $1.8 million clean. With the liens and disputes, they'd essentially bought Brandon a lawsuit with a prestigious address. I called the tax assessor's office, identifying myself as a lien holder conducting due diligence. "That property," the clerk said. "We're actually preparing a tax sale notice. If the back taxes aren't settled within 90 days, it goes to auction. 90 days. I could work with that. Wednesday. I visited the property. Brandon's car wasn't there surgical rounds until Thursday. I walked the perimeter with my measuring wheel, documenting everything. The northern boundary where the lots overlapped. The unfinished renovation work still visible exposed wiring. Castellano hadn't been paid to complete. The gorgeous view of the lake that made every problem seem worth it until the bills came due. My phone rang. Richard from work. Ava, you logged into the system at 3 a.m. to pull comparable sales for Seven Pines. Working on something, personal research project. Using company resources. Using my expertise. The resources are just tools. Fair enough. Find anything interesting? Found that assumptions are expensive. They always are. Thursday night. I compiled everything into a presentation. Clean, clinical, irrefutable. Every document scanned and organized. Every timeline mapped. Every dollar accounted for. The kind of thorough that revealed not just the problem, but the pattern of negligence that created it. Eli watched from the couch as I worked. You're really doing this. They gave me no choice. They handed Brandon keys to a house built on their assumptions that expensive means excellent, that prestigious means protected, that their golden child deserves gold even if it's painted lead. And you're going to show them the lead. I'm going to show them what happens when you treat details as trivial. When you assume the person pouring your wine isn't also capable of auditing your mistakes. Friday morning. I initiated Phase 2, a call to the title insurance company my parents should have used. I'm calling about a potential claim on a Seven Pines property. I'm a secured creditor, and I've discovered multiple undisclosed issues. Was title insurance purchased for the transaction? No. Cash sale? No professional oversight. Then any claims would need to go through the courts. Expensive process. I'm counting on it. By Friday afternoon, I had everything in place. The lien assignment, properly recorded. The notice of intent, properly filed. The tax situation, properly documented. A perfect storm of legal reality waiting to make landfall at Brandon's housewarming party. They thought they'd given him a mansion. I'd proven it was a house of cards. And I was about to be the wind. The plan crystallized like ice forming on a window, clear, inevitable, beautiful in its precision. Objective, not destruction. Recalibration. Force them to see what they'd been blind to for 32 years. Make them choose, recognize my value, or lose everything they'd gifted their golden child. Step 1. Secure the position. Saturday morning. 10 a.m. I sat in the office of Whitman & Associates, my independent legal counsel. Sarah Whitman had the kind of reputation that made opposing lawyers sweat. You own a valid mechanics lien against the property, she confirmed, reviewing my papers. Colorado revised statutes are clear you can foreclose on this lien. The tax situation makes it even more interesting. If they can't pay both the back taxes and your lien, they'll have to choose which fire to put out first. Exactly. Now, what's your end game? An escrow arrangement. 3 options for the family, all legally binding. I laid out the structure. Sarah's smile grew with each detail. This is surgical, she said. Completely legal, thoroughly documented, and devastating if they don't comply. I'll draw up the papers. Step 2. File the notices. Monday arrived with paperwork. The notice of default went out via certified mail to Brandon's new address and my parents' home. The courthouse filing was public record by noon. By 2 p.m., I'd also contacted the tax assessor's office as a lien holder, confirming my interest in the property's tax situation. If the taxes aren't brought current, the clerk informed me, lien holders get notified of the auction date. Perfect. Please ensure all notices come to my LLC address. Step 3. The pressure points, I reached out to Castellano again, this time with a different proposition. Mike, I need you to be available for a meeting in 2 weeks. Paid consultation, $500 for 2 hours of your time. What kind of meeting? The kind where you explain to my brother exactly what work you did and didn't get paid for. Bring photos. With pleasure. Next, the boundary dispute. I contacted the northern neighbor, Dr. Patricia Huang, who'd filed the original complaint. I'm a secured creditor on the property, I explained. I'm trying to resolve all outstanding issues. Could you document your survey findings? I have a full surveyor's report showing the 12-foot encroachment. I've been trying to resolve this for 2 years. Would you consider attending a settlement meeting? If it means finally fixing this absolutely. Step 4. The stage setting. The escrow documents took 3 days to perfect. Sarah had outdone herself. 3 separate folders, each containing a different resolution. Option 1. Transfer the property to Hartley Family Trust with me as sole trustee. Brandon retains lifetime residency rights contingent on maintaining the property, paying all liens and taxes, and formally acknowledging my role in resolving the crisis. Includes a public statement at the family gathering. Option 2. Family pays all outstanding debts plus 20% penalty, reimburses my costs, and provides written apology acknowledging their failure to recognize my professional expertise. I release all claims. Option 3. Proceed with foreclosure. Family loses the property entirely. Public auction. Everyone in Denver's elite circles would know. They'll choose option 1, Sarah predicted. The humiliation of 3 would kill them, and 2 is too expensive. That's the point. They value appearance over everything. I'm using that against them. Step 5. The invitation I called Diane Wednesday evening. Voice sweet as poisoned honey. Mom, I've arranged something special for Brandon's housewarming. A surprise that involves the house itself. What kind of surprise? The kind that shows how much I value family. I've invited some people who've been instrumental in the property's history. It'll be memorable. Well, that's unusually thoughtful of you. I'm full of surprises. Oh, and I'll need 20 minutes during dinner for the presentation. Trust me, Brandon will never forget it. She agreed, probably assuming I'd arranged some tedious slideshow of baby photos. Step 6. Documentation. I prepared the visual aids with the precision of a prosecutor. Every document scanned in high resolution, the timeline of negligence, the mountain of debt, the evidence of my parents' catastrophic oversight. The PowerPoint opened with a photo of the mansion. Beautiful, pristine, perfect. The second slide showed the real numbers. Property value, $2.3 million paid. Actual value, $1.8 million maximum outstanding tax debt, $47,832.16. Mechanics lien, $183,000 boundary dispute resolution. Estimated $50,000, $100,000, $1,000. Total liability, $280,000, $330,000. Current position technically insolvent. The final slide was my favorite. A photo of the mechanics lien assignment document. New holder, Hartley Ridge LLC. Owner, Ava Hartley. Step 7. The witnesses Sarah would attend as legal counsel. Mike Castellano as the wronged contractor. Dr. Huang as the boundary dispute plaintiff. Eli as moral support. Each person strategically chosen, professionally relevant, unimpeachable. I also hired a court reporter. Every word would be transcribed, every decision documented. You're building a case, Eli observed, watching me arrange the folders. I'm building a mirror, I corrected. They're going to see exactly what their preferences have cost them. Step 8. The final touch. Friday before the party, I visited a trophy shop, had a small plaque made, Hartley Family Trust established 2024, Ava Hartley, sole trustee, details matter. It would sit next to the property deed after they signed. A permanent reminder that the child they'd overlooked had been the only one watching carefully enough to save them. The plan was set, every piece positioned, every document authenticated, every word of the presentation rehearsed. They'd taught me to be helpful, to serve, to stand in the shadows. They never realized shadows were the perfect place to observe everything. And now, with Brandon's housewarming party 2 days away, I held all the cards they never knew were in play. The golden child was about to learn his throne was built on sand, and I was the tide coming in. Eli kissed me goodbye that Friday night. "You sure you want to do this? Family is family." "That's exactly why I'm doing it," I said. "Because family should mean more than just shared DNA and selective blindness. It should mean seeing each other clearly. And if they still don't see you after this," I smiled, thinking of that empty picture frame on their mantel, the one that never held my photo. "Then at least they'll see what ignoring me cost them. Sometimes that's the only recognition worth having." The countdown began. 48 hours until dinner. 48 hours until the reveal. 48 hours until the family portrait finally included everyone, whether they liked it or not. The copper finch gave me the same private dining room without question. Saturday afternoon. I arrived 3 hours early to prepare the battlefield. "Same table as 2 weeks ago," the manager, Philippe, asked. "Exactly the same. And I'll need your help with something." I handed him a sealed manila envelope, thick with documents. "At 8:20 p.m. exactly. Bring this in. Not 8:19. Not 8:21. Set it at the head of the table and announce you have a delivery that requires immediate attention." Very specific. "Very important. There's also a projector in my car. Can we set it up?" Philippe, who'd seen enough family dramas play out in his establishment, simply nodded. "The white wall will work as a screen." The room transformed under my direction. The projector positioned perfectly. 3 folders placed at precise intervals along the table, red, yellow, and green, like traffic signals. The court reporter's station in the corner, discreet but visible. Small place cards at each seat, including one that read, "Ava Hartley, Risk Assessment Specialist," the title they'd never bothered to remember. I'd texted each invited guest separately. Mike Castellano would arrive at 8:25, Dr. Huang at 8:30. Sarah Whitman was already there, reviewing notes in the bar. Eli would come with me, my one concession to emotional support. At 5 p.m. I stood in the center of the room, visualizing. They'd sit where they always sat, Martin at the head, Diane to his right, Brandon to his left, the power triangle that had defined every family gathering. Tonight, that geometry would shift. The laptop was loaded, the presentation remote tested, the documents organized in order of escalating impact, everything measured twice, cut once, ready to reshape the family structure. I returned home to dress. Not the usual understated black they expected from me. Tonight, sharp burgundy suit, the color of aged wine and old blood. The kind of outfit that said I wasn't here to serve drinks. "You look like a closer," Eli said, adjusting my collar. "The kind that makes people sign whatever you're selling?" "They're not buying anything. They're paying for what they already bought." My phone buzzed. Diane. "Don't forget the Riesling Brandon likes. The 2019. I texted back. "Everything's already arranged." At 7:45, we walked into the Copper Finch. My family was already there. Brandon holding court about his new surgical technique. The keys to the mansion sat on the table beside him like a centerpiece. He'd been carrying them everywhere. I heard. His talisman of achievement. "Ava." Diane's voice carried that particular note of surprise she used when I appeared looking presentable. "You look formal." "It's a special occasion." Martin glanced at the projector. "What's all this? Part of the surprise. You'll see." We settled into our assigned seats. I noticed Brandon eyeing my place card with amusement. Risk Assessment Specialist, still padding the resume. Still ignorant of what I actually do, I replied smoothly. The first course arrived. Small talk bubbled like champagne foam Brandon's patient roster. A new country club membership, vacation plans for Aspen. I counted minutes like a countdown to launch. 8:15. Philippe's staff cleared the plates with choreographed precision. I stood, remote in hand. "Before the surprise," I said, "I want to thank you all for teaching me something valuable." "Oh," Martin looked amused. "You taught me that in this family. We reward excellence. We celebrate achievement. We acknowledge who contributes the most." "Exactly right." Diane beamed. squeezing Brandon's shoulder. So tonight, I want to show you who's really been contributing to the Seven Pines estate. I clicked the remote. The mansion appeared on the wall, gorgeous, pristine, the crown jewel of Brandon's success. Beautiful property, I continued. $2.3 million. Cash purchase, no inspection, no title insurance, because, as Dad says, those are just trivial details. Martin's smile flickered. Click. The next slide, the outstanding debts listed in blood-red font. $47,000 in back taxes, $183,000 in construction lines, a 12-foot boundary dispute with the northern neighbor. The room went silent. That's impossible, Brandon said. The seller said? The seller lied, and you believed him because you didn't check. Because checking is what people like me do. The people who handle paperwork. 8:20 p.m. Philippe entered with the manila envelope, set it at Martin's place. Urgent delivery requiring immediate attention. Martin opened it slowly, his face draining of color as he read. Notice of intent to execute on lien. I narrated for the room. Filed Monday. The construction lien is mine now. I bought it from Castellano Construction for 50 cents on the dollar. You bought it, Diane's voice cracked. With my own money, from my job in paperwork. The one that taught me how to read what you never bothered to examine. Brandon stood. This is insane. You can't. I have, and in 5 minutes, Mike Castellano will walk through that door to explain exactly what work he didn't get paid for. In 10 minutes, Dr. Huang will arrive to discuss the boundary dispute you inherited. And my lawyer, Sarah Whitman, is already at the bar, ready to discuss your options. I walked to the 3 folders, touching each one. Red folder foreclosure proceedings begin Monday. You lose the house. Everyone in Denver knows the Caldwells couldn't manage a basic real estate purchase. Martin's hand trembled holding his scotch. Yellow folder. You pay everything, all debts, plus penalties, plus my costs. Roughly $400,000, due within 30 days. And you sign a formal acknowledgement of my expertise in saving you from catastrophic loss. Diane had gone pale as her pearls. Green folder. The house transfers to a family trust I control. Brandon keeps residency rights if he maintains the property and pays all debts. You acknowledge publicly tonight, in this room, with witnesses that your trivial details person just saved your golden child from bankruptcy. This is extortion, Brandon spat. This is leverage, Sarah Whitman said from the doorway, having arrived precisely on cue. And completely legal. I've reviewed all documentation. Your sister owns a valid lien that could force foreclosure. These are generous options. Mike Castellano appeared next, work boots incongruous against the copper finch's carpet. Brandon Caldwell. I'm the contractor you stiffed. Your sister paid my debt, so now she owns it. But I brought photos of all the work you never paid for. Want to see? Brandon slumped back into his chair. Dr. Huang entered last, carrying her surveyor's report. Mr. and Mrs. Caldwell, we need to discuss your son's 12-foot encroachment onto my property. The room was full now. Witnesses to the unraveling. The court reporter typed steadily in the corner, recording every word. I stood at the head of the table, Martin's usual spot, and looked at my family. You gave Brandon keys to a mansion you never properly vetted. You handed him a symbol of success that was actually a monument to carelessness, because you assumed expensive meant excellent, because you assumed the seller was honest, because you assumed someone else would handle the details. I set the small plaque on the table. Hartley Family Trust details matter. I'm someone else, and I handled everything. The question now is, which folder do you choose? The keys to the mansion lay between us, no longer shining with promise, but weighted with consequence. 20 minutes, I said, sitting down. Philippe will bring dessert while you decide. The most expensive meal of their lives was about to get its real bill. The silence stretched like a wire about to snap. Martin's face had gone from pale to florid, the scotch forgotten in his hand. Diane clutched her pearls like a rosary. Brandon stared at the keys beside his plate as if they'd transformed into serpents. "This is what you do." Brandon's voice came out strangled. "Destroy your own family. I'm saving this family from a $400,000 mistake?" "You're welcome." "You're bitter." Diane spat, her composure cracking. "You've always been jealous of Brandon's success." "His success?" I clicked the remote. New slide, my professional biography. 7 years at Frontier Meridian, 43 million in prevented losses. 6 commendations for risk detection. Average deal size 12 million. I don't need to be jealous of anyone's success. I just wanted you to see mine. Mike Castellano cleared his throat. Should I show the photos of the unfinished work, or— "Not yet," I said. "They're still processing that their favorite child owns a lawsuit, not a mansion." Martin slammed his glass down. "Enough. This is extortion." Sarah Whitman stepped forward. "Mr. Caldwell, I'm recording this conversation. Nothing your daughter has done violates Colorado law. She purchased a valid debt. She's offering resolution options. You should be grateful most creditors would simply foreclose." "Grateful." Martin stood, his chair scraping. "She's orchestrating our humiliation." "No," I said quietly. "I'm orchestrating your education, the one you never bothered to get when you threw millions at a property you never inspected." Dr. Huang opened her survey report. "If I may, the boundary issue alone will cost approximately $70,000 to resolve. The fence, landscaping, and pool equipment are all on my property." Brandon's head snapped up. "The pool. 12 feet of it." Dr. Huang confirmed. Philippe discreetly placed dessert plates that nobody touched. The creme brulee sat untouched, its sugar crust unbroken, like the family facade we'd maintained for so long. "You planned this," Diane said, her voice trembling. "You knew about the problems when we bought it." "I knew about the problems 3 months ago when I assessed the development for a client. You knew nothing when you bought it 2 weeks ago because you didn't ask me. Because my expertise is paperwork. Because I'm the one who pours wine while Brandon performs surgery." "That's not," Martin started. "June 15th, 2019. I interrupted. "Brandon's promotion dinner. You toasted him for 40 minutes. When I mentioned I'd just saved Coleman Industries from a $20 million acquisition failure, you said, 'That's nice. Dear. Brandon, tell them about the new surgical wing.'" The court reporter's fingers never stopped moving. "October 3rd, 2020. My birthday. You forgot. Brandon's conference in Miami, you sent a car to the airport. February 11th, 2022. I was nominated for the National Risk Assessment Excellence Award. You were in Aspen for Brandon's weekend off." Each date landed like evidence in a trial. "So yes, I knew. And I waited. Because I wanted you to hand Brandon those keys yourself. To make the same choice you always make him over me. Appearance over substance. Assumptions over analysis." Martin pulled out his phone. "I'm calling our lawyer." "Call him," Sarah said. "I'll be happy to explain the situation. Your daughter owns a primary lien on a property with multiple title defects. She's offered 3 resolution options. You have," she checked her watch, 11 minutes to decide." Brandon finally spoke, his surgeon's arrogance deflated. "You'd really foreclose, make this public. The notice of intent is already public record. The Denver Post would find it interesting. Prominent surgeon loses mansion to sister's lien. But I'm hoping you choose better." "Better?" Diane laughed bitterly. "You mean surrender?" "I mean acknowledge that the person you've ignored for 32 years just demonstrated more expertise than your golden child and your prestigious lawyers combined." Mike Castellano shifted uncomfortably. "Ma'am, should I—" "Show them," I said. He spread photos across the table. Exposed wiring, unfinished plumbing, half-installed fixtures, $183,000 of work, premium materials, all documented, never paid. Brandon stared at the evidence of the mansion's flaws. "The seller said it was move-in ready." "The seller said what you wanted to hear. And you believed it because checking would have been trivial. 840p. 5 minutes left. Martin's phone rang. His lawyer. He stepped away, speaking in harsh whispers. When he returned, his face had aged years. "Green folder," he said quietly. "Martin." Diane protested. "The green folder," he repeated. "The trust option." I slid it across the table. "Page 4 requires Brandon's signature acknowledging my role in resolving this crisis. Page 7 requires your public acknowledgement right now, in this room, that I saved this family from financial catastrophe." "This is revenge," Brandon said. "This is recognition, the only currency this family trades in." Sarah produced a notary seal. "I'll need to witness all signatures." They signed. Each signature scraped out reluctantly, but they signed. The court reporter recorded Brandon's forced acknowledgement. "My sister's professional expertise prevented significant financial loss to our family, but I wasn't done." "One more thing." I stood, holding the mansion keys. "These transfer to the trustee. Tonight. Publicly." "You can't be serious," Diane whispered. "Dead serious. You made a ceremony of giving them to Brandon. Now make a ceremony of giving them to me." Martin's jaw worked like he was chewing glass. "This is cruel." Cruel was 32 years of erasure. This is justice. Philippe, who'd seen enough dinner theater, dimmed the lights slightly, creating a natural spotlight at the table's center. Diane's hands shook as she picked up the keys, the same velvet box, the same brass keys, but now they meant something different, not favoritism, but failure, not gift, but debt. "Say it," I prompted. "Ava," she managed, "we acknowledge your expertise, and we're grateful you prevented our mistake from becoming a catastrophe." "Brandon." He looked at me with the confusion of someone discovering the servant had been the master all along. "You saved us." "You saved me from bankruptcy. Because you're exceptional at what you do, and we never saw it." The keys passed from Diane's manicured fingers to mine. Cold metal, warm with possibility. "The trust takes effect Monday," I said, pocketing them. "Brandon, you can continue living there once you've paid the tax debt and settled with Dr. Huang. I'll manage the renovations properly this time." "With what money?" he asked bitterly. "With the equity loan you'll take out, unless you'd prefer foreclosure." Silence. Meeting adjourned. Sarah announced, "All documents are legally binding." Mike Castellano and Dr. Huang left first, both nodding to me with something like respect. Sarah gathered the signed papers. The court reporter packed up her equipment. Soon it was just family, the same 5 people who'd shared hundreds of dinners, but the shape had changed. "Why?" Martin asked finally. "Because you taught me that in this family. We reward excellence." Tonight, excellence got rewarded. I stood to leave, Eli beside me. At the door, I turned back. Next family dinner, I choose the restaurant and the seating arrangement. The keys jingled in my pocket as I walked out, their weight perfectly balanced. Behind me, I heard the sound of Brandon's creme brulee cracking under his spoon, the perfect crust shattered, the sweet custard beneath finally exposed, just like everything else tonight. The manager returned with a silver tray. On it sat the mansion keys in their velvet box center stage under the chandelier's cold light. Diane's fingers hesitated above them like she was reaching into fire. "We're waiting," I said, my voice steady as a level. Martin's phone buzzed again. His lawyer, no doubt confirming what I already knew. They were trapped in a web of their own carelessness, and I held every thread. Diane lifted the keys. The same hands that had presented them to Brandon 2 weeks ago with such ceremony now trembled with the weight of their real cost. Brandon couldn't even look at them. The golden child discovering his throne was made of fool's gold. "Ava Hartley," Diane began, her voice barely above a whisper. The court reporter leaned forward to catch every word. "As the new trustee of the Hartley Family Trust, these keys, louder," I said. "Everyone should hear this." She cleared her throat. Started again. These keys belong to you, as the person who prevented our financial catastrophe, as the person whose expertise we failed to recognize, and Brandon. My brother stood slowly, his surgeon's hands so steady in the operating room shaking as he pushed the keys across the table toward me. You earned these. You earned more than these. You earned what we never gave you respect. I picked up the keys, their weight different now, not heavy with resentment, but balanced with resolution. The brass caught the light as I held them up, examining them like the risk assessment they'd always been. Monday morning, I said, slipping them into my pocket. New locks, new security codes. You'll get copies once all debts are cleared and agreements are signed. You're locking us out. Diane's facade finally cracked completely. I'm implementing proper access control. Something else you should have done from the beginning. Eli stood beside me, his hand warm on my back, the kind of support I'd never felt from family. Sarah gathered the signed documents into her briefcase with efficient satisfaction. The court reporter closed her machine with a definitive click. One more thing, I said, pulling the family photograph from my bag, the one from their mantel, where I was always absent. I set it in the center of the table, then placed a new photo beside it. The new one showed me standing in front of the Frontier Meridian building, holding my National Risk Assessment Excellence Award nomination certificate. Alone, centered, visible. For your mantle, I said. Unless that space is only for surgeons. Martin found his voice finally. You planned every second of this. I learned from the best. You taught me that image matters more than substance, that performance beats competence, that being seen is more important than what you see. So tonight, I made sure you saw everything. This won't last, Brandon said, a last grasp at his old authority. Family is family. Exactly, I agreed. And families are supposed to see each other, all of each other, not just the parts that photograph well at charity galas. I moved toward the door, then stopped. One final thing. Brandon, you asked if this was revenge. I turned back to face them all. It wasn't. Revenge would have been letting you lose everything while I watched from the shadows where you put me. This was rescue. The difference is, this time, everyone knows who did the rescuing. Felipe appeared with the check. The leather folder sat on the table like a verdict. I've got this, I said, taking it. After all, I'm the one with the job and paperwork. The total was more than most people's monthly salary. I paid it without blinking. 32 years of being invisible had taught me to save every penny they'd never noticed I earned. Your next family dinner invitation, I said at the door. I'll consider it, but I choose the venue, I choose the menu, and I sit wherever I want. Ava, Diane started. Trustee Hartley, I corrected. That's my title now. Use it. Outside, Denver's night air felt crisp and clean. Eli took my hand as we walked to the car. Feel better? He asked. I feel seen. They'll probably hate you for a while. They'll respect me forever. We drove past the Seven Pines development on the way home. Even in darkness, the mansion was visible lit landscape lights highlighting its perfect facade. By Monday, those lights would be on new timers, my schedule. I thought about Brandon moving through those rooms now, knowing each door opened only because his overlooked sister allowed it, knowing the keys in his pocket were copies, not originals, knowing that every mortgage payment would remind him who really saved his reputation. My phone buzzed, a text from Richard at work. Heard through the grapevine about tonight. Legendary. The risk assessment of a lifetime. Then another, from Martin. We need to talk about Thanksgiving. I deleted it without responding. They could wait. 32 years of waiting had taught me patience. Now it was their turn to learn it. At home, I placed the mansion keys on my dresser, next to my Frontier Meridian ID badge and my risk assessment certification. Tomorrow, they'd go in my office safe. Tonight, they could sit in the open, catching the moonlight, finally in the right hands. Eli wrapped his arms around me from behind. So what now? Now I manage a trust, protect an asset. Do what I've always done, handle the details everyone else ignores. And your family. I thought about the empty chair at their dinner table, the space I'd never quite filled because they'd never quite let me. That space would still be there, but now it would mean something different. Not absence, but choice. Not exclusion, but independence. They'll adapt, I said, or they won't. Either way, the trust remains under my control. The keys gleamed in the darkness, brass bright with possibility. Tomorrow, Brandon would wake up in a house he owned but didn't control. My parents would face their friends knowing their overlooked daughter had saved their golden son from ruin. And I would go to work, assess more risks, prevent more disasters, save more people from their expensive assumptions. The same job I'd always done. Except now, everyone would know exactly what that job was worth. The family portrait would never be the same. Finally, after 32 years, neither would I. The keys sat on my dresser like a trophy, not for winning, for finally, irrevocably, being seen. The chandelier in their dining room would keep casting its cold light on their gatherings, but the shadow it had always thrown over me, that shadow was gone. I'd stepped into the light, and I'd brought the receipts. Thank you for listening to this story. I'd love to know where you're tuning in from. Drop a comment below and let's connect. If this tale of family justice and sweet vindication resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts. What would you have done in Ava's position? Let me know in the comments.